sunbeams find you. Sweet dreams that leave all worries behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me.
Good morning. You are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz, K-Squid 90.7 FM, streaming live at ksqd.org. I am Catherine Bell, and this is the Dream Journal, a weekly show where we explore the healing powers of your nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with you. In the words of Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. What is happening inside your brain when you're dreaming? And why are dreams so often unpleasant? Today we will be talking with Finnish scientist Katja Valli about the evolutionary logic behind our illogical dreams. I am Catherine Bell, and welcome to the Dream Journal. The Dream Journal is also a podcast, so you can look for that on all your regular podcast places. You can also look at the KSQD website. The webpage there is ksqd.org/the-dream-journal. Look for the Dream Journal, review it, subscribe, and tell a friend. So starting with my personal work. Listening into this beautiful music by Rick Kleffel, which I always so appreciate that he creates new for us every single week. So I had a dream which was really little more than a phrase, but what a phrase it was. I was talking with some people, and I'm not even sure who said it, but the phrase that I remember is the sweet spot between being numb and being overwhelmed. So for me, that, oh gosh, I can feel it right now. That makes me think about emotions. And that, the sweet spot where I can feel my emotions, but not be overwhelmed by them. And also not have to really tune them out and so be numb. That there's so many times that I've had to, tune them out. And of course we do. We do have to tune out our emotions when we need to, like when we want to drive and be safe, we have to focus. And so there's times when it's totally appropriate to push away an emotion. But I had spent so much of my life, up until the last 10, 15 years really, just pretending that I didn't even have emotions and just thinking I was this rational being. But actually what it was is felt like a lot of the time I was pretty numb. And what would happen, of course, when I had a child, that, is very challenging. And certainly during the pandemic, it is even more challenging since parents are with their kids all the time. And I would get to the point of being overwhelmed and just, I would get upset by my emotions. I'd yell or something. And I did not like that. But there's a way that I kind of would alternate between numbness and overwhelm. But bit by bit, the dreams have been leading me to a place where there's more and more time during the day I can actually stay with my feelings and notice them and not be so overwhelmed. It still happens. This morning I was thinking about the show today, and I was getting a little jittery around that, and I sprayed water on myself because I wasn't paying attention. So I was numbed out because I was really focused on something, on thinking about the new show that's coming up at 11 o'clock. There's going to be a new show here. I'll tell you a lot more about it. Eric Nelson and Tony Rusomano are going to have a new show called What a Week. And I hope you guys can stay for it. I think it's going to be a fun talk show, but we'll see what it is. It's going to be an experience. So between the sweet spot between being numb and being overwhelmed. And that's what I wish for myself throughout the day. And that's what I wish for all of you too. Can you find the spot where emotions feel good and they feel like being alive? So today, as usual, I am inviting call-ins during the last 20 minutes of the show, so you can get ready for that. You might want to jot that number down. And now it is 831-900-5773. That's 900 KSQD. You can share a dream or ask a question at that point. So save that number and you can call in about 35 minutes. That number again is 831-900-5773. All right. Hello, Katja Valli.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi. Good. So glad to have you. Katja is dialing in all the way from Finland, so we really have a truly international show today. Katja, why don't you say a few words about yourself? Introduce yourself.
So I'm a dream researcher.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm getting an echo. And I've been interested in dreams for about 25 years. I started getting interested in when I was looking for a topic for my master's thesis. And ever since, I've studied the content of dreams, the function of dreams, and also what happens in our brain when we dream.
Wonderful. And you have a PhD, I understand, now, and you're working, tell us about what your position is now, where you're working.
So I'm currently a senior researcher at the University of Turku and also an associate professor in cognitive neuroscience at the University of Skövde, which is in Sweden.
So you commute between Finland and Sweden, or how do you do that?
I commute a few times a year to give courses in Sweden and work over distance the rest of the year.
Well, I guess we're doing a lot of distance working these days for sure with the pandemic. So Katja, so you said you started getting interested in dreams when you were studying for your master's. What is it that first interested you in dreams, or what first drew your attention to the field of dreaming? Did you have dreams of your own that inspired you?
I had a very vivid dream life when younger, and it's still quite vivid. So there was the personal interest. And the other thing was that I was wondering, why do we spend not only 8 hours a day asleep, but we have experiences during that time? What are the experiences for? Why do we have them? Do they serve any function?
Yeah, well, even the whole process of sleeping is quite mysterious. It seems strange that an organism would think it would be beneficial to just lay there inert for a third of the entire day when you're not looking for food, you're not mating, you're not doing anything active. And yet a third, for humans it's a third. I know animals vary quite a bit. So there must be something super important about sleeping, because all mammals certainly sleep, and I think the current understanding is that all mammals have probably dream, that they have periods of rapid eye motion like humans do during dream time. And I think even, I don't know about fish or reptiles sleep though, but there's something super important about sleeping. And then dreaming is one of the parts of sleeping. So there is something evolutionarily important there. And what have you found? What are some of the highlights of what you've learned, Katja?
Well, my approach has been mostly to study the so-called threat simulation theory of dreaming, which proposes that our dreams are actually a virtual reality training platform that, based on our memories, we rerun our memories in creative combinations to train for the future. So that those neurocognitive mechanisms that are involved in perceiving threats and reacting to threats get slightly better. And this way, when we encounter a comparable event again in the waking life, we might be slightly faster and more efficient in responding to it. And in fact, when we look at dreams, majority of our dreams, even in healthy, normal, happy people, contain a surprisingly high number of different types of unpleasant events and threats.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. So the theory is that these threats are something that we can practice while we're asleep, so we're more likely to be able to deal with them when we're awake. Is that the theory?
Yes. So in the safe environment of sleep, we are in our beds, and we get all this training every night, even though we cannot remember most of it in the morning. Mm-hmm. But training that takes place during sleep is still efficient in modifying our brain and in modifying our future behaviors.
I remember reading a study quite some time ago about pregnant women and their dreams, and there was, I can't remember the details since it was so long ago, but what stayed with me is that the women who dreamed about childbirth, even if the childbirth didn't go well in the dream, that the women who dreamed about childbirth had an easier time at the actual giving birth.
And there is also a study that looks into the dreams of women who have just given birth to a baby. Uh-huh. And while before they got pregnant, most of their dreams were focused on themselves. When they got pregnant, and especially after the birth, the dreams were much more focused on the baby and the well-being of the baby.
So and that's something, especially with the first child, it's totally new territory. No matter how many classes you take or books you read or kids you babysit, when it's your own child, there's a lot to learn. Now, I actually, when I was advertising for this show on Facebook, I got a comment that somebody said that their dreams are pretty much all positive. So are there some people that do have more positive dreams than negative dreams, or than unpleasant versus unpleasant? Or is it, I'm curious about the studies that have shown that dream feelings are more likely unpleasant than pleasant. Is that really universal, or is there a range?
That is actually... how would I explain it? When external raters look at dream reports that have been written down by people,
right,
they find much more negative emotions in the dreams than positive emotions. But when people self-rate their emotions in their dreams, the ratio is typically much more balanced.
Oh, interesting.
So people actually seem to be having more positive dreams than researchers think. But we need to really have the people then rate the dreams themselves.
Well,
and of course, there's inter-individual variation on the emotions in dreams. So we know that people who are depressed or anxious or have a lot of negative emotions during wakefulness also tend to have more negative dreams. Right. So happy people tend to have happier dreams.
Okay. And so there's that effect. That certainly makes sense. But then you also said something I want to understand, that about people's rating their own dreams. Like if you took a certain dream from a certain person and a scientist, a studier, rated the emotional content, they would rate it more negative than the person itself would who had the dream. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, that's exact.
Well, that's interesting, and it does kind of make sense, because we want to learn from our dreams, and if they're so scary and uncomfortable and unpleasant all the time, we won't want to remember them at all. So perhaps there's some kind of a bias in that when we look at our own dreams, they seem more pleasant or at least matter of fact than to an unbiased researcher.
Yeah, and there is also the fact that what do people actually report when they talk about their experiences? It might be that people are more likely to write down and report negative emotions than to write down their positive feelings. So that then biases the findings when they are rated by people who don't have access to the actual dream experience, but only to the retrospective report of the experience.
I see. Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's part of a normal human bias to pay more attention to negative events in waking life as well as in our dreams. That's just a normal part of surviving. It's way more important to pay attention to the one tiger versus to like the 10 fruit trees. Whatever you have to pay attention to the dangerous things more than the pleasant things So it does tend to lead toward, there's some kind of a bias where humans notice negative things more than positive things. And of course, we can train ourselves. Like if we're wanting a more positive outlook, there's things like gratitude practices or even meditation where we notice what's happening, notice feelings and images, but holding them more neutrally. And I guess that shows up in dreams too. All right, well, we are speaking with Katja Valli. This is the Dream Journal on KSQUID 90.7 FM, and I am your host, Catherine Bell. In about 20 minutes, I will be opening the phone. So at that point, you'll be able to call into 831-900-5773. You can share a dream you're curious about or ask a question. KSQUID, many voices, one station. So you're listening to the Dream Journal, and we are here live with Finnish researcher Katja Valli. Hello.
Hello, Catherine.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the evolutionary function of dreaming, and I'm curious if you could say a little bit about what's actually happening in the mind while we're dreaming.
We know quite a lot about what happens in the brain when we are asleep, but we know surprisingly little what actually happens in the brain when we are having a dream versus when we are not having a dream. So it seems that the most consistent finding when it comes to the neural correlates of dreaming, that is what happens in the brain when we are having versus not having a dream, is that the more slow wave activity we have, the deeper the sleep, the less likely we are to remember a dream when we wake up.
Makes sense. Oh, yes. No, that makes sense. So I'm surprised, though, because I have read various books. I'm thinking of Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, who talks about a lot of details about what happens in the brain while we're dreaming. So it's interesting that you say that it's actually not very well known.
No, because we actually know that majority of our dreams, or the longest and vivid dreams, we have in rapid eye movement sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have rapid eye movement sleep after which people cannot remember any dreaming. So it's very easy to confuse what happens in the brain during REM sleep with what happens in the brain during dreaming. And of course, certainly some of the features of REM sleep are probably essential to dreaming, because that's when majority of dreaming takes place.
Right.
But we also dream in other sleep stages as well, when the brain activity is very different from rapid eye movement sleep.
Really? I did not. That's interesting. Can you say more about that?
So during rapid eye movement sleep, our brain is highly active, and especially the centers that are involved in emotion processing, producing movement during wakefulness, are highly active, even more active than during wakefulness, while areas that relate to ability to reflect upon our true conditions, such as understanding that we are asleep, are much less active during rapid eye movement sleep than during wakefulness. So these features might explain why our dreams have this emotional quality, why we have a lot of movement in our dreams, sense of kinesthesia, but why we are unable to understand that we are dreaming while we're actually having the dream. And also, our memory functions do not operate in the same way during sleep as they do during wakefulness, which means that this might explain why we often have amnesia for dreams, that we only tend to remember a fragment of the dreams that we woke up from.
So what actual parts of the brain? I mean, I'm not I'm very interested in this, and my understanding is like the hippocampus and the amygdala are very active during dreaming, but that the prefrontal cortex is not, because that's more where our judgment and our self-awareness comes in, as I understand it. And what if you could be a little more specific about some of these areas?
Yeah, so the hippocampus and the amygdala that relate to memory processing and emotional processing are very active in rapid eye movement sleep, which might explain, our dreams are based on our memories, and our dreams have lots of different types of emotions.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And then but the self-awareness part is not so present there.
Exactly. So when we are in a dream, we have free will. We can think about our consequences of our own actions, but we cannot understand that we are dreaming unless we are having a lucid dream.
Unless we're having a lucid dream? A
lucid dream.
Right, okay. Because I understand when we're in a lucid dream, then the prefrontal cortex does get involved, and we can actually have more memory of the dream and more self-awareness. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's what has been found in studies looking at the activity of the prefrontal areas during lucid dream versus normal dream.
Mm-hmm.
So this lucid dream state is like a hybrid state between wakefulness and sleep. And activity of the prefrontal cortex might allow us to become aware of the dream while we are having it.
So I was trying to understand the difference between REM sleep and dreaming, because my understanding is that REM sleep is where the primary dreams occurred, that there's some other kind of thought processes going on in between REM states while we're sleeping. But it seems like you were saying something more specific than that.
We dream in all sleep stages, also in the very deep non-REM sleep. So towards the morning, our dreams get longer and more complex,
right,
both in non-rapid eye movement sleep and REM sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned, we do have REM sleep without dreaming, or at least people cannot always remember dreams from REM sleep.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. So the person might go into REM sleep and the researcher wakes them up, but they don't say that they were dreaming.
Exactly. And this happens especially in the early stages of sleep, when our REM periods are shorter.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay, that's interesting. So there may be some other processes going on during REM sleep. The dreaming is part of what's going on, but it's not everything.
It's not everything. And especially because we have dreams also in other sleep stages, we cannot say that REM sleep is the correlate of dreaming.
Okay. Oh, interesting. So it's not as cut and dried as I had thought. So complex, because you're kind of on the frontier of this research yourself, being a researcher on this topic. So that is pretty fascinating. So this kind of mysterious then, the whole dreaming thing is long been mysterious, and we're getting closer perhaps to understanding what's going on. But, even just the phenomenon of waking consciousness is something that we know very little about. It's something that we have a hard time understanding from a neurological point of view as well, I understand.
Exactly. And it's very difficult to study the correlates of consciousness during wakefulness, because when people are awake, they are conscious of something all the time.
Huh.
But dreams could give us, or sleep and dreams could give us this contrasting state between sleep when we have no experiences, when we are basically unconscious, versus sleep when we do have experiences, dreams. And this could help us to decipher what is needed to happen in the brain in order for conscious experiences to be created in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Like, what is consciousness and what parts of the brain are involved in consciousness? And is it unique to humans is another question, or do other animals also have a form of consciousness? It's gets to be kind of a philosophical question, although you're studying the more biological aspect of it.
Yeah, of course, the only way to access other people's consciousness is through the reports that they give us.
Yes.
Or by observing their behavior. But behavioral observations never tell us about the quality of experiences. So if we think that different types of animals have experiences when they are awake, why wouldn't they have experiences while they are asleep? So why wouldn't animals dream? Not possibly the same way as humans do, but in some form that reflects the types of experiences that these animals have during wakefulness.
Right. Well, if there's an evolutionary advantage in humans in simulating difficult, threats and things that are coming our way, then it makes sense that animals would have a similar benefit from dreaming and imagining, taking care of what they need to do in their animal lives as well.
I would expect that if dreaming has a function, this function is not unique to humans, but to all species that dream. And this relates to what is important for that specific species.
Right. Right. Certainly all of us who have pets have seen their pets dreaming. It's very clear there's something going on with their twitching and whining, and then they might even wake up looking anxious. I've seen that in my dog, so I know that he probably has a very similar kind of experience as I do, and for the similar benefits.
Yeah, and dogs are a species that have very poor muscle atonia during REM sleep, so they actually move in REM sleep, and they can twitch and kick and run and whine and bark.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that these might reflect what is going on in their minds during sleep.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why I don't sleep with my dog. Because he would wake me up, as he does, twitch and bark. Okay. Well, I wanted to shift the topic a little bit. I'm very curious about sleep disorders in dreaming. I actually have a listener who asked me a question a while ago, and I'm wondering if you're someone who could answer it. I know that you do some studies about to do with sleep disorders, but this particular listener was interested in, her experience is that she has really bad sleep apnea, and when the apnea started, she started having really bad dreams too, and she's found that she's unable to use a CPAP machine or anything like that, and she has very bad dreams ever since the sleep apnea started. Have you ever heard of such a connection?
Well, of course, if something meddles with our sleep, that easily affects our dreams.
Yeah.
And in sleep apnea patients, especially in the beginning, they might have more dreams about being suffocated or drowning.
Right.
But because the condition usually develops slowly, especially in people who've had this condition for a while, we don't see any higher prevalence of suffocation dreams or drowning dreams anymore.
Oh, interesting. So as they adapt to it, those dreams kind of decrease.
Yeah, they kind of get used to their condition.
Oh, okay. Well, and that certainly would be a threat, too, is if the person can't breathe when they're sleeping, then that's something that would no doubt sponsor bad dreams. That does make sense. So what about other kinds of sleep disorders? You mentioned narcolepsy, sleepwalking, that sort of thing. How does that affect the dreaming mind, or what have you found about that?
Well, in narcolepsy patients, what they have is this misalignment of sleep and wake. So these states easily get confused, and they also tend to have a period of rapid eye movement sleep immediately after falling asleep, which is not something that happens in healthy individuals. But people with narcolepsy report having a lot more nightmares, more vivid, more emotional dreams than healthy individuals. And they also more often get these, false memories from their dreams. So something happens in the dream and they think that it actually happened in waking life. And of course, also normal people sometimes have this, that you confuse the memory source of a memory trace. But people with narcolepsy have more of these false memories.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, when I was young, I had a memory that for years I thought it was an actual waking life memory. But as I thought about it, I was like, this could possibly have happened. It doesn't really make sense. It was just a very simple thing of just driving in a truck with my father into a certain warehouse, which I've never been into. But in the dream, well, apparently it was a dream, that seemed normal, that we were going to go. I was going to work, and one of my father's work colleagues was also with us. And it just seemed like a memory, but over that, in my memory, so-called, my false memory, I thought I was about 10 years old when this happened. But when I was a teenager, I was like, why would this have ever happened? I've never been in that warehouse. It must have been a dream. But it seems like a regular memory.
Yeah, so even healthy people sometimes confuse what is the actual source of a memory trace. But for people with narcolepsy, this is much more common. And in some cases, these false memories can persist for a very long time. As you described, you've had this false conception for years that you had been in this warehouse.
Yeah.
And of course, if you think that something really bad has happened, which in actual reality hasn't happened, it can have a huge effect on your daily life.
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh, I can imagine thinking you had a big fight with your partner and it never happened, or any kind of traumatic experience, as you said, could be a real impact on your life. So what do people, is there a way to distinguish a false memory from a true memory, or is it just something that you have to kind of deal with and know that this might happen sometimes?
Well, I think that if you reflect on the memory and think about it and try to recall the original event, that might help you decipher the source of the memory trace. But of course, what might also happen is that you start doing something. For example, you're angry at your partner and your partner wonders why you are angry. And then you say, because of the big fight that we had, and your partner tells that we haven't had a fight in years.
Oh.
So then something happens in the waking life that alerts you to understanding that your memory is actually not to be trusted.
Wow, that's pretty disturbing, because it could really be like your word against mine. Like, well, I remember it. I see. That could be a real problem for people. So that's with narcolepsy. That's interesting. And do you have any sense of what might be going on there? What might be happening?
It's just that maybe because the dreams of these people are often more vivid, they might seem more realistic, and they might leave a memory trace that is equally strong to any waking life memory trace. So in a sense, our brain doesn't have a way of tagging whether this memory is a wake memory or a dream memory.
Okay. Right, because of course our dreams seem like they're waking life. They seem like, at least they seem normal when we're in them. And one of the ways to become lucid is to notice something's a little strange and go, oh, I think this must be a dream here. But that's very rare. That most dreams that people have, you go on carrying on through the dream thinking this is actually happening. But when you wake up, it is pretty clear that this was not an actual memory, that this is a dream, because the waking mind can distinguish, whereas the dreaming mind, not so much.
Yeah, but when we are having the dream, majority of our dreams are about things and events that could actually happen to us in our waking lives.
That's true.
And the dream environment is a perfectly realistic replica of the real perceptual world. So our dreams lure us into believing that whatever is happening in the dream is actually happening right now, as any waking event.
Right. But somehow when we wake up, that there's a way we can shift and go, okay, yes, it felt real at the time, but now that I'm awake, I realize that was a dream. But for these people with sleep disorders, that they can't have that. They don't have that tagging.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's very fascinating. So, Katja, this is Katja Valli from Finland. I would like to go to our last segment. So the phones are now open if people would like to call in. The number is 831-900-5773, and Max is standing by to take your calls. So you're listening to the Dream Journal, and this is K-Squid 90.7 FM, streaming live at ksqd.org. talk. So this is our last segment of the show. You're welcome to call in. The number now is 831-900-5773. You're welcome to share a dream if you have one that you're interested in, or you can ask a question. We have on the line Dr. Katja Valli from Finland. Hello.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi. So this has been a fantastic topic. So what else do you have on your mind? What other kind of things do you study?
Well, you mentioned sleepwalking,
Yes.
and although I haven't studied sleepwalkers personally, what I found really fascinating is that we used to have this conception that sleepwalkers are like zombies, that they just move around and behave during sleep without having any experiences that would guide their behaviors. But in fact, it seems that majority of at least adult sleepwalkers, not necessarily children, can remember fragments of experiences, and then their behaviors match these experiences. For example, you have dream imagery of your bed being full of spiders, and you run out of bed screaming and try to clean the bed. Or like this one woman who suddenly in the middle of the night rushed her dog to a shower. And when asked why she did it, she said the dog was on fire.
Oh.
So we had this conception that sleepwalkers are zombies, but in fact it seems that probably majority of them has some sort of an ongoing experience that guides their behavior, although it seldom leaves a memory afterwards.
Oh, that's interesting. So they actually can remember what was happening when they were sleeping.
Yeah, so usually if you ask in the morning, they have no recollection that they had been sleepwalking or doing anything. But if you manage to wake them up shortly after the episode and ask them, they can remember at least fragments of experiences.
Oh, I've read a book, I think it's Rosalind Cartwright, The 24-Hour Mind. She talks quite a bit about sleepwalking. Are you familiar with this book?
Yes, I've read it.
Yeah, she has several interesting lines of research, some of them about the healing properties of dreams, but she also has a lot to say about sleepwalking, and she talks about several cases of people who actually committed crimes while they were sleepwalking, and I believe that some of them were acquitted because they were asleep while they were doing it. But I wonder what was going on in their dream that led them to actually commit some of these grisly crimes that they committed.
That's a very good question, and luckily such extreme cases of sleepwalking are extremely rare.
Yes, thank goodness.
So, I mean, usually the behaviors are benign, just walking around the house and maybe even checking the fridge or going to the toilet. But there have been cases of sleepwalking violence and even, as you mentioned, sleepwalking murder. And then, of course, it's sometimes very difficult to prove from a forensic point of view whether the person actually committed the murder while awake and claims to have been sleepwalking, or whether it really was something done during a period of complete confusion, because, of course, during sleepwalking, most of the brain is asleep.
Right.
So these people may not have any way of reflecting on what they are doing when they are doing it.
Well, it sure sounds like it could be a convenient excuse if you wanted to get away with a crime. Oh, I was asleep. So how would you prove such a thing? Luckily, it doesn't happen very often. And mostly, as you say, it's fairly innocent, eating or walking around the house.
Yeah, and if you hurt somebody, it's usually yourself when you hit your toe to a bedpost or something like that.
Right. Exactly. Have you personally had any experiences with sleepwalking?
Only a couple of times in my life.
You did?
But my mom used to sleepwalk quite a lot, and she still extremely rarely but occasionally does it. So I've managed to observe my mother sleepwalking.
Oh, interesting. And so you could tell that she was asleep by how did you know she was asleep?
First of all, the way she was staring around as if not seeing properly, and when I talked to her, she didn't respond. And for example, one night when she was sleepwalking, it had started to rain, so she opened the front door and took her shoes that she had left on the porch into the house. Mm. So apparently she had this idea that the shoes will be getting wet in the rain. And then she went back to bed when the shoes were safe and sound.
Well, that seems very useful.
That is very useful, but she really didn't react to whatever I was saying to her.
So that's part of the clue that she was really sleepwalking, is that she didn't react to you when you were speaking.
Yeah, only grunted or something like that.
Okay.
So often these people look like they are in a different realm. In a sense.
Okay, and I guess they are. They really are in a totally different mental state, a really neurological realm. And you've sleptwalked a few times too. I have heard that it tends to be run in families.
There is actually, if your parent is a sleepwalker, or especially if both of your parents have been sleepwalkers, a higher risk for the child to also engage in sleepwalking. Mm-hmm. So there seems to be a genetic component to the condition, as well as to many other parasomnia type sleep disorders, like having nightmares, seems to also slightly run in families.
Oh, really? Interesting. Even nightmare disorders, huh?
Yes. So in studies that have looked at, for example, identical twins versus non-identical twins or any siblings, if one identical twin is having frequent nightmares, the other one tends to have them more often than non-related non-identical twin or any other sibling.
All right, so that's the genetic evidence there. Well, I want to let listeners know that the phones are open. If anybody wants to make a phone call to ask Dr. Valli any questions they have or to share a dream that they have, the phone number is 831-900-5773. We're getting down to the last 10, 12 minutes of the show. So, Katja... So what else do you have on your mind? Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us in the last little bit of the show?
Oh, let me think.
Well, okay, if I may, could we get a little personal? I mean, do you pay attention to your dreams now? Do you actually work with your dreams as a dream person? I know you're a researcher, but also do you do the kind of self-analysis that so many of us do with our dreams?
I pay attention to my dreams, and every morning when I wake up, I try to reserve this little quiet moment to think about whether I was dreaming before awakening and what happened in the dream. And I'm interested in my dreams, but I'm a little bit lazy in a sense that I never seem to have enough time to keep a dream journal. I've done that occasionally, but then I tend to drop it. And I don't analyze my dreams that much, but I feel that by paying attention to what happens in your own dreams, it sometimes gives you a lot of good clues to what is actually bothering your waking mind. Yeah. So what are the things that you are not paying attention to enough maybe during the waking hours?
Right. All right. Okay. That's definitely, I've found that as well. So Katja, we have a caller on the line. We have Chris. So hello, Chris.
Hi, Catherine.
Oh, hi, Chris.
Hi. I'm really enjoying the show, and the sleepwalking information is just fascinating. And as I was listening, I remembered a sleepwalking incident with my son when he was very young, and I'd love to get some feedback on it. I know you don't have much time, so very quickly we were sleeping in our camper together, and I woke up and I saw him standing up on his bed, and I was quite concerned that he was going to fall, so I went, assuming he was awake, I went over and said, what's wrong? Do you need to get out of bed? And he just looked at me and he said, Mom, look what I made, and pointed, next to him where, of course, there was nothing. And that's when I realized maybe he's dreaming, and I said, tell me about it. He said, Mom, look what I built. Isn't it beautiful? It fixes everything.
Oh, wow.
And it was this amazing touching moment, and then he just kind of laid back down and went back to sleep. But it was very clear to me that he was asleep and not awake, but also that he was aware of me and having a conversation with me. So that's what's fascinating, and I would love some input on that.
Well, how old was he, Chris?
Oh, when did we go to the music festival together, Catherine?
Oh, we went to pretty much every year since our kids were babies, so
Exactly.
that doesn't narrow it down very much.
He was maybe 4 or 5. It's pretty young. Pretty young.
What do you think, Katja?
Well, yeah, first of all, sleepwalking is much more common in children than in adults. So it's something that children tend to grow out of eventually with time. And some sleepwalkers are able to, because sleepwalkers usually have their eyes open and they can monitor the environment and they can navigate in the environment and do complex things like open doors or windows or even drive a car in the worst case scenario.
Yikes.
And some sleepwalkers can monitor the environment to the point where they can actually have even a meaningful conversation with another person. I mean, usually if you talk to a sleepwalker, they don't necessarily respond, or they say something that really doesn't reflect what you were asking them. So they might have this thought in their mind that they are talking about that doesn't in any way relate to what you were saying. But some can actually have quite complex conversations while asleep.
Oh, interesting. I love that he thinks so. This fixes everything, huh?
Yeah, I love that part.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Chris. That was wonderful to have you call in.
Bye-bye.
So it occurs to me, Katja, that we have coming up in June our virtual conference with the IASD, the International Association for the Study of Dreams, is doing a virtual conference in June. I believe it's the 13th through the 17th. And I know we have a lot of very interesting research topics. Dr. Valli is the research coordinator for our conference. I wonder if you would like to talk a little bit about some of the offerings of what's happening in the conference in June.
Well, in the annual conference, we always have one of the keynote speakers being a researcher. And this year we have Professor Ture Nielsen from Montreal, a long-term dream researcher. And I'm very much looking forward to his talk, which is actually titled Do-It-Yourself Dream Research.
Oh, interesting.
We also have an invited speaker, Professor Michael Nadorf, who's done studies on nightmares.
He's been on the show before. He's fabulous, yes.
Yeah, and in the research track, we also have a number of talks that, based on the titles, will be highly interesting. We, for example, have one session where researchers talk about what we know about dreams during the COVID-19 pandemic.
That must be Deirdre Barrett. I've been wanting to get her on the show for a while now, so she's going to talk about some of those results of pandemic dreams. Wonderful. And then there's a number of workshops as well. I believe you're leading a workshop. Is that right?
In the research track, we don't really have workshops in a sense, but we do have some featured panel discussions. So we center around a specific topic. For example, I'm hoping to have a symposium or a panel discussion on the ethical aspects of affecting our dreams, because there are now these studies into different types of equipment, for example, that could be used to stimulate certain kind of dream content, or there are dream incubation techniques that might help you to dream about a specific topic. And I think there is also, what is important is the ethical aspect of what if we can affect the content of our dreams? Should we do it? How should we do it? When we shouldn't do it?
Right. Well, it's a good question. I mean, if we don't really understand dreams, but we know is that somehow they're evolutionarily very important, we don't want to mess up a process that's working pretty well. On the other hand, if we can enhance the work that the dreams are doing for us, then that's a good thing. So I can see that's a pretty thorny issue.
Yeah, and for example, people who have nightmares, especially post-traumatic nightmares, having methods that help alleviate the content of those very bad dreams could be very useful for psychological health.
Definitely. Right, but there is, as you say, an ethical issue of whether it's appropriate or not. Certainly, if it's disrupting somebody's life and disrupting their sleep, then I think an intervention does make sense. Well, that sounds very interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of fabulous topics coming up for that conference. And so the conference is, you can find out more about that conference at asdreams.org and look underneath international conferences. And we're now taking registrations. It's a deeply discounted registration because it's virtual. It's going to be online from your own living room, from your own bedroom, on your couch, wherever you are with your Zoom camera. Then you can participate in the conference. It's June 13th through 17th, and we'll have people participating from all over the world. So we have, of course, from Finland and Katja, and we have lots of people from Germany and Australia, I know. So there's going to be, I think, 130 presentations in separate tracks. And there's a lot that's going to be recorded. Anything that's not an actual workshop or a dream group, where people are not sharing dreams, because it's not okay to record someone's personal dreams unless they give full consent. And so, but there will be recordings available for lots of that information. So you don't have to be laying in front of your Zoom camera for 8 hours a day, but you can participate in the ones you want to and listen to recordings. And I think it's going to be a really fun conference. I suggest our listeners to go check it out, asdreams.org. And we have lots of art this year. One of the big highlights is having to do with dreams and the arts. And we have our usual lucid dreaming track, as well as dreams in health, dream work practices, and culture and history. We have a keynote, Fanny Brewster. We have some interest in racial diversity and really wanting to talk about cultural issues. So we have a number of presentations about that as well. So Katja, how can folks get in touch with you if they have questions for you and like to follow up?
I would suggest sending me an email would be a good idea.
Okay.
So my email address is katja.valli@utu.fi.
So that's katja.valli@utu.fi. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Thanks for spelling it out for me.
Oh, of course. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Katja. So in the last minute here, do you have any final words you want to say to our listeners?
Pay attention to your dreams. You can actually learn something by paying attention to your dreams. And even just, think about it. You sleep 8 hours a night and you dream most of that time. So what in the heck is your brain doing all that time? I think that is a huge mystery that we all have access to through our own observations.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Katja. So glad to hear you from halfway around the world.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Okay, take care. Well, so next week, you have heard of post-traumatic stress disorder. What about post-traumatic spiritual development? Next week, we will be talking with Linda Schiller about her new book, PTS Dreams. Listen live next Saturday at 10 a.m. or catch the podcast replay, which will be released on the Monday following the show. I also have an ongoing series of Monday workshops, which you're welcome to join. Plus, I have interactive dream groups where you can work directly with your dreams in a small group. And of course, I work one-on-one with dreamers as well. And I offer a free introductory consultation for that. Whenever you'd like, give me a call. My phone number, my email is Catherine@ksquid.org, KATHERINE@ksqd.org.
Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you. Sweet dreams that leave all worries.
I am Catherine Bell, and this has been the Dream Journal. Thanks for listening. You can find out more about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. And like I said, you can email me at Catherine@ksquid.org, KATHERINE@ksqd.org. If you like the show, please tell some friends about it, because that's how people learn about the show. I'd like to thank my program assistant, Max Deaton, and our creative musician, Rick Kleffel, who created an original composition for our ambient music again today, and for our call-in from Chris. I'd also like to thank all the generous donors who support this station. K-Squid is 100% listener-supported, and donations are always welcome at ksqd.org. That's all for the Dream Journal. Join me next Saturday at 10 a.m. And when you wake up tomorrow morning, take a minute to look within. Do you remember a dream? Write it down and bring it to the next Dream Journal.